Hey folks, there are few IT news stories today as front and center as the Broadcom and VMware, well, I guess I'll say debacle. Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably know that VMware was purchased by Broadcom some time ago, and since then, it hasn't been a great road for VMware customers. I've talked with several folks that have seen 1,000+% increases in their licensing costs. Broadcom's throwing around cease and desist letters and a whole bunch of other things. Now, what I thought we'd do for this episode today is I've got Eric Siron on, and today we're going to talk about the Broadcom VMware saga from end to end. We're going to discuss all the things that have happened. We're going to discuss what the impact is on VMware administrators, where VMware administrators should look next, and lots more on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey folks, it's a new week. That means it's time for the next episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by technology professionals for technology professionals and dedicated to all the folks that are toiling away in the trenches, keeping our digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Syrewicze, and I've got one of our very regular co-hosts on with me today. I've got Eric Siron back. How's it going, Eric?
I'm good. How you doing, Andy?
Doing good. We've got... I don't want to say a divisive topic today, but it's kind of a hot topic, and it has been for a while. Today we are talking about Broadcom drama, I guess I would say, or more specifically, what the hell has Broadcom done to VMware? That's kind of the question that we're answering today. And I don't know if I have an answer for it, but we're certainly going to discuss what's happened, what the fallout is, and where do people go from here. So should be an interesting topic today. And of course, you know, you and I always have great virtualization conversations, Eric. So I'm definitely looking forward to getting your insight on this, especially from where you sit in like the healthcare IT field. It's going to be interesting to see your take on some of this stuff as well too. So really excited to get into this. But before we get into that, we have our couple of recurring segments that we do at the beginning of every show. And I guess I'm going to dive right in here because whenever Eric and I get talking about virtualization stuff, we tend to go for a while. So I think we'll just dive right in and get this ball rolling, right? So the News React segment, this is a segment of the show where my co-host and I, we discuss a news headline that came across our monitors recently that really drew our eyes. And I'm going to selfishly go first for the News React segment. And what caught my eye was a headline regarding Jen Easterly. And if you're not familiar with who Jen Easterly is, Jen Easterly was the director of CISA for many, many, many years until recently. And fantastic resource for the community. She did a fantastic job at CISA, made a lot of great improvements over there. She is now part of the advisory board at Huntress. So Huntress, very well-respected security company. The reason why this is so interesting to me is Huntress they're so respected in the industry. They have so much goodwill. They provide a lot of great community feedback. When I see somebody like Jen Easterly end up on their advisory board, that is like additional confirmation of like, okay, Huntress is going someplace. Like, they're going places, right? And so it's just interesting to see, right? So again, I tend to look at things through a security lens, but if I was a security company and I had the former head of CISA on my advisory board, that's, I don't know how else I want to say it. Our show is PG-13, so what I want to say I can't, but that's great, right? That's really great for me as a security company to have someone like Jen Easterly on. So I'll put the link to that in the show notes so you folks can check that out if you want to. But Eric, I'm going to hand it over to you for your News React item of the episode.
All right. Well, this one hits close to my new home. I now live in the state of Illinois, and I see that the state has just passed a law that you cannot have a therapist that is purely AI. So no company can go out and to say, yeah, we're going to provide therapeutic services, mental health services to someone and only use AI. There must be a human. And they put a lot of basically restrictions and controls in there so that they're not stopping people from using AI as part of their therapy, but it really needs to be human driven. And this kind of ties into something I have said for years and years and years and years and years: is never send technology to solve a human problem. And I think this is really nice to see at least a state legislation go, yeah, that's definitely a human problem that needs the human touch.
For sure. To be honest, I'm surprised it took us this long to get to a point where some legislation was starting to go around along those lines with AI for mental health. Because I've seen so many headlines recently where uh, people have ended up committed in extreme cases because they've like become obsessive about using AI for mental health. And if you've ever noticed I know GPT is especially like this. It very much wants to agree with you, right? It very, very much wants to agree with you. And from a mental health perspective, that's not always the best thing for you, right? Sometimes, you need to have that counter viewpoint to whatever situation you're in. Now, uh, I've been very open about my anxiety disorder and various different outlets on the internet. And I will say there are a few times where I'm not sure I would say I use it for mental health. There are situations where, I don't know, I'll be anxious one day. Normally, I'm pretty good about being able to dissect it and oh yeah, it's that thing over there I'm anxious about, and I can talk myself through it, right? Once in a while, it's like this knot, and I'm like, I'm anxious. Why? I don't know. It's really useful for kind of peeling apart that puzzle in certain situations. The other thing it's really good at, I found, is mindfulness exercises. So, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Give me a few things I can do to, some grounding exercises, right? It's good for that type of thing, but I would never, ever, ever dream of using it for more deep conversational or strategic type mental health use. That just seems irresponsible to me, but that's me. So that's where I'm at with it, So I think that's good that it should not be used in that capacity. Like you said, don't send technology to fix a human problem, right?
I
So,
don't want. I mean, I would never. I don't know, like somebody looking for help, and if they find a way to get ChatGPT to do it, better than nothing. I think it's really the responsibility on that provider side to go, we can't do that as providers. That we have a big thing. And can you imagine if somebody, like you said, ChatGPT wants to agree with you? What if somebody got to that really dark place where they think the world will be better without them, and they got ChatGPT to agree to that, and then if it was under the signature of a mental health company that
oh,
was, can you imagine what, I mean, it's just like, I think, I know, like in my own mental health struggle, I've mostly been really fortunate in that I've never gone to such a dark place, but so it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of someone who is there, but I definitely would want a human being who would go, no, this is about the worst possible thing you can think. That's absolutely not true. The world is not going to be a better place without any of us, so
right.
Um, yeah, and then getting Chat GPT or somebody to go, oh, yeah, maybe that is a good idea. Well, no, it's wrong. It's automatically wrong. No. So,
I I would really like to think that wouldn't happen, but you and I have both been in tech for a long, 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 long
mhm,
time. We know how this stuff works. If it hasn't happened somewhere already, it probably will at
it could
some
be.
point.
And of course, I've never tried that, but I mean, if you argue with Chat GPT long enough, it'll eventually just whatever you say, guy, whatever you say.
Uh, well, it's good that we've at least got state legislatures starting to take a look at it because I don't want to get political on this podcast. That's not what this podcast is about. But there's been a lot of talk at the federal level in the U.S. about we're not going to put any regulation on AI. personally, I think that's the wrong move. I think there should be some regulation, but it shouldn't be burdensome regulation, right? But there should be some. That's my opinion. Anyway.
Yeah, they should always give themselves the out to say, you know what, if you're really going to use this for world domination, maybe we will make a law.
Yeah.
You know, sitting there saying we're not going to have any at all. Like, ooh, why would you tie your own hands like that? That's
Yeah,
terrible.
exactly. Anyway. Interesting times. So, well, that wraps it for our news react segment of the show. The next segment of our show is called Nerd Hour. And of course, it doesn't take an hour, but it is the segment of the show where my co-host and I, we talk about the geeky, nerdy things that we've been working on in either our professional lives or our spare time. Eric, I'll start with you. What have you been working on lately?
Oh, most of it has to do with moving. So now that I'm in Illinois, the other part is I've always, my entire life, always lived in something that's, if not metropolitan exactly, at least within, boundaries of a decently large town, I guess. And now I actually straight up live rural. I'm on a US route now instead of so yeah, getting internet and things to work out here under the trees and that's been fun. And yeah, a lot of learning lessons for me of how I'm gonna, I work remotely, so this is it. I gotta have internet all the time, and it's been fun.
That reminds me of we rented a house many, many, many years ago. And I did my due diligence before we signed the lease. I called the local providers and I said, "Hey, here's the address of this house we're looking to rent. Can you provide internet service to the house?" "Oh, yeah, we can do that. Yep, we got that covered." Okay, cool. I go and sign the lease. Gets to be a few days before moving day. I call the provider, the internet provider, to start initiating the transfer. "Yeah, we can't service that address. Our hard line is half a mile from there. But you can pay $10,000 to run the hard line if you want." So this is back when Alltel was still a company. Everybody remembers the cell phone company Alltel, right? Maybe that was a Michigan only thing. I'm not sure. Anyway,
not ringing a bell here.
I think they were bought up by Verizon way back in the day. So, Verizon adjacent at the very least. But anyway, I remember buying a 3G Alltel cellular card. You remember the old slot style cards that would go into the laptop? Well, I bought a desktop adapter to where that would plug into a USB port. I took an old Pentium 3 desktop and turned it into a router for that.
Well,
for
of course you did. That's awesome. Wait. Was that tech? Was that PCMCIA?
It was. Indeed it was.
I don't remember any other use for that except those little cell cards. I know. Yeah.
And it worked well. The other interesting part is it was a stone house we were renting, so it had to live like in this one window of the house. So, yep. But it worked. It got us through the year or two that we were there. So it worked. So anyway, very familiar with that internet in rural capacities. So our good friend Paul Schnackenberg, he's been on talking in this very segment of the show about some struggles he's been having with some of his customers out in rural Australia. So that's been interesting to hear about as well too. He was talking about, and folks on the show know this if you've been listening to all the episodes, but I found this comical. Excuse me. I think it was in the recent episode we did on troubleshooting. We were talking about things not to do during troubleshooting. And one of the people that he was servicing, one of his customers, they were having latency issues because, again, they're out in the middle of nowhere in Australia. Internet's not great. So they call up the application, the support for the application that they were having troubles with, and the support guy is just like, "You're where? Oh, yeah, that's your problem. That's your problem, mate, right there. Yeah, have a good day, okay?" And like, okay. Anyway, check out that troubleshooting episode, folks, if you haven't. Which reminds me, I forgot to plug one thing before we got into our recurring segments. Check out our newsletter as well, because I included some of the troubleshooting stuff in our weekly newsletter. You can find that at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And we include all kinds of cool, awesome stuff in there, including links to current versions of the show. We include a bunch of great community content in there as well. Nice, awesome, fancy tools. I think the one that I included in today's edition that just went out, we're recording this on August 5th. I was talking about Daisy Disk. If you don't know about Daisy Disk, it is a disk management and cleanup tool for Mac OS. Think WinDirStat, but it actually looks nice. So yeah, that's where we're at. So I'm not bagging on WinDirStat. Great application. It does its job well. I'm just, Daisy Disk has that Mac OS appeal. Anyway, I'll get off my high horse now, and I will talk about my nerdy, geeky stuff that I've been working on. I've got a side project in the works, and everybody on the show knows that I love Hugo. It's a great static site generator for simple websites. I have a project I'm working on that needs a little bit more than a static website. I'm going to need some additional things that I probably shouldn't do with a Hugo built static website. So I'm looking at Ghost. I don't know if it's officially classified as a CMS, content management system, but you often see it on lists next to, other web pages type things like WordPress and Joomla and that type of thing. So the cool thing about Ghost is, and this is going to come as no surprise to anyone who's heard me talk for any length of time on this show, native Markdown support, which is cool. Yes. Oh, there goes Andy talking about Markdown again. Now, hopefully you're saying, oh, fine, Andy, I'll try Markdown, and I, too, will start singing the praise of Markdown to the masses. So, yeah. Anyway. I'll stop talking about Markdown now, but that's the geeky, nerdy stuff I have been working on. So, anyway, what do you think, Eric? Should we get to our core topic today? Again, what the hell has Broadcom done to VMware?
Let's do it.
So, unless you've been living under a rock, you have no doubt heard that. How many years ago has it been, Eric? It's been like 2 or 3 years now. Broadcom bought VMware. Now, I don't know. When I think of Broadcom, I always think of network cards, right? That's probably what most people associate Broadcom with. And you may not have good things to say about Broadcom network cards. I certainly don't. So with that in mind, when I heard the news that they were buying VMware, when I first got over my initial shock of, that's kind of interesting, I tried to be hopeful, right? I really tried to be hopeful that this wouldn't be like everything else that Broadcom has done that has just not turned out super well. But my hopes were dashed rather quickly. And so I've broken this topic up into a couple of different sections here. And I figured, I'm not sure exactly what more we need to say about like the initial acquisition other than VMware was acquired. A whole bunch of people left the organization. So there was massive brain drain when the acquisition happened. And then they trimmed the fat quite a bit. I'm not even convinced it was fat per se, right?
Right.
They just, gutted the organization. I think they wanted the IP more than they wanted anything else. And you'll see a theme, I'm sure, by the end of this episode. I think Broadcom was vastly more interested in the large enterprise customer base than they were anything else, and the money coming from that large enterprise customer base. And so I thought an interesting place to start, Eric, would be kind of the customer backlash. So I think most of the community had the same hopeful vibe when that initial acquisition happened, kind of hoped things wouldn't turn south, but it became apparent very, very quickly that that was not the case. I mean, you just do a search for Broadcom VMware on any search engine, you'll find a whole list of negative press around it, right? And I think the thing that probably, I don't want to say hurts me, maybe it annoys me the most, is that if you are an SMB or maybe your service provider catering to SMBs and you want to stay with VMware, you're kind of SOL. I don't think that's going to be possible because Broadcom has made it very clear they don't want your business. In my opinion, that's an opinion. I have nothing definitive that says that other than their behavior, but again, it's an opinion. So, Eric, I'll let you get a word in edgewise here.
I think you said the words I would have said is like they declared war on their customer base and
Sure
uh,
did.
yeah.
Like they've done things to their customer base that for any major company I would have thought would be the death knell of that company. You know what I mean? Like Broadcom, I guess, to be honest, I just never realized how massively large they actually are and how deep their coffers really are. Because they've, like you said, they've declared war on their customer base. I mean, one of the more recent examples of the mistreatment of their customer base is people that are still on perpetual licenses. Again, keyword here, perpetual licenses. Broadcom is now sending out cease and desist letters. Like, hey, stop using the perpetual license that you purchased from the company we bought, which I don't know. What would you do, Eric, if you're sitting in your office at your day job as a sysadmin? You're sitting there, you're doing your management, mail comes by, and you have a cease and desist letter from VMware for your vSphere cluster, which is the core of your data center. Stop using it. And I can't imagine, I'm sure some of the articles have mentioned what the length of time was for that cease and desist. But knowing what I know of Broadcom, I can't imagine it was any sufficient length of time. You
Yeah,
know, not
I
enough
seem to
time
remember it was
to,
really short. Yeah.
yeah, not enough time to migrate a business of any size off to some other virtualization solution, let alone get trained up on it and follow best practices and all that. Right? We'll get into that more here a little bit in the episode, but yeah, I mean, cease and desist letters. I I still can't believe it, to be honest. I guess at this day and age, I shouldn't be surprised by things anymore, but I still am. So, oh,
It'll be
I
interesting to see. If you were asked me as one person, I'm not entirely sure what I would do. I mean, it would basically kind of be like, well, I guess I'm done giving VMware any money ever again.
yep,
Um, but you also have to, operate in the best interests of your own company, which may not necessarily fall to that. You may make different decisions because, sometimes you just got to swallow it and say this is wrong, but, you know,
right,
I'll pay this. What may happen, and part of that would be like you can look at it and say it's morally repugnant and potentially illegal. And I think there's probably a case to be made for like what they're telling you is don't patch this product when patches are fixing defects in the product that shouldn't have been there in the first place. So I think there is a case to come back after them on that is that you sold us a product that was defective and then you created a fix for it, but now you want to charge us for it. And there's a lot of previous history on different products that say you can't do that. That's essentially a recall situation and you
right,
got to fix it. You have to make it right. Now, me sitting at my desk wherever I'm at, I'm not going to have the attorneys prepared to take on Broadcom. And what they will do is they will tie you up in procedural stuff until you go away, till you run out of money. And so that would have to be a very large customer or a whole bunch of smaller customers bonding together. And even then, the case is far from a slam dunk. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, me sitting there in my office getting that letter, well, you don't have any good choices at all. You have none.
There's no good choice there. Yeah, I mean, it's like either we're gonna pay through the nose, and I'm this leads into our next talking point here a little bit, and that is talking about licensing and pricing fallouts. But it's relevant to this discussion. There are some companies that have been receiving reported licensing cost increase of 1,500%. That's not a typo. Some people have been getting bills for 1,500% higher costs than they were using the previous year. Now, Eric, if I got that bill on my desk, I would call Broadcom and I would say, this has to be a typo. 150% increase, I wouldn't like it, but I could kind of see, right? Okay, new company, they're really pushing up costs. Okay, I can see 150% increase. But 1,500%? Get the hell out of here.
It's impractical.
Like,
it's just impractical
yeah.
to get this out of somebody.
It's it's obscene. Like there's no world where I can take this license renewal to my accounting department and have any rational discussion with my CFO on getting that approval. Like you said, every situation is different. You might be a company that like, okay, there's no way we can spin off of VMware in 30, 60, 90 days, whatever, 6 months. I mean, it depends on the organization. It might be cheaper in the end to pony up that 1,500% increase, right? It's not a good situation to be in, but maybe that's the best play you have, right? So like you said, we're back to the thing of like, hey, we don't have any good choices, right? Which is unfortunate. And there's one other thing you mentioned I want to circle back to here too, is the litigation angle. I did a quick search while you were talking to see if there was any current litigation going on here. And there seems to be quite a few reported cases. And again, this was just a quick search. This is by no means exhaustive and comprehensive, but I see AT&T mentioned here. I see a Dutch court order mentions Siemens. This one's interesting. My cybersecurity ears perked up when I saw this name. UnitedHealthcare. UnitedHealthcare, they filed suit alleging, and this is reported by Network World, they filed a suit alleging Broadcom coerced it into agreeing to massively inflated software bundles, costing, quote, hundreds of millions more in renewals and forcing undesired subscription terms. That sounds like predatory business practices to me. Again, my opinion, but
100% what it is.
Yep.
We got you in a place where you can't live without us, and now we're gonna, yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to look very far to see litigation happening. And I have to imagine at some point there's going to be some legal pushback. But like you said, Broadcom's got the coffers to where they could just sit back and run out the clock, right? Just tie everything up in court and hope people go away. But of course, I see companies like AT&T on the list. I don't know. That's like Clash of the Titans there at that point, So, I mean, who knows? But we'll see.
It doesn't sound like Broadcom's running on thin margins. Sounds like they've got a whole lot, and of course they're taking away. You've got all these poor people out there who fine will pay your ransom here, and their ransom is going to pay for the attorneys to hold off the AT&Ts. While AT&T, I mean, I don't really love them at all, but I don't think they're running that kind of a scam, so they're much thinner,
Oh,
We'll
it's just crazy to see because I started my career more on the VMware side and I became a Hyper-V convert, right? Hyper-V won me over. So, I mean, I was very much a VMware administrator before I was a Hyper-V administrator. And so, like, I still have fond feelings for the product, but I just can't anymore because of the company that now owns it. It's just frustrating to see. Well, we've kind of talked about the licensing and pricing fallouts. Obviously, there's a ton of customer backlash. There's litigation stuff happening. Let's talk a little bit more. I want to dive into customer experience, maybe a little bit also about product enhancements or lack thereof. Maybe talk about some security stuff briefly. But let's talk about the decline of the customer experience. And I mean, this is a tale as old as time, Eric, right? Company gets bought out. They get squeezed for every penny possible by the new owner. Brain drain happens. It's fire and brimstone for the people that are left over. And what ultimately happens, right? Quality of service drops. And so I have seen post after post after post of people complaining about that, what do I want to call it? That loss of customer first culture, right? VMware used to be known for that. I've said on the show before about Microsoft that when you used to call Microsoft support, you would learn more about that particular issue than you ever wanted to know. Well, that's not the case with Microsoft anymore. And unfortunately, that's not the case with VMware under Broadcom anymore. I remember, what was it? So we were running a fairly large vSphere instance in our data center back in my MSP days. And the heap size on the data store. So we would have a data store that would just become unavailable after it had been online for a couple weeks. And come to find out, it was an issue with the heap store setting. Like the default was not good enough. And so, I mean, that's a very obscure setting. Come to find out, through a very, very high quality VMware support technician, we figured out it was the heap size, right? So those days, it sounds like, are unfortunately over. I have no doubt that there are talented people still in the support organization over there, but we know what happens when organizations get gutted like that, right? The good people that are still there, they get inundated with more than they could possibly handle, and they become burnout. And I can't blame them for becoming burnout, you know? And so I think ultimately what the decline of customer experience is going to have is ultimately what I think it is an additional push out the door for those customers that Broadcom does not want to service. I mean, that's what it points to for me personally. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Eric.
You and I have very different experiences. VMware did more to sell me on Hyper-V than Microsoft did back in the 2010, 2011 era when I was that's when 2008 R2 came out, and it had, that's when, in my opinion, that's when Hyper-V kind of entered the chat, or as they say now.
For sure.
It wasn't the first version of it, but it was the one that like, we can use this in a actual real functioning company and get the HA and everything that we need out of it. And it's kind of running down, both A and B comparison sort of a thing. And man, my talks with VMware were very, very, they were extremely animus.
Really interesting.
Yeah, it was like, are you trying to sell me on this, or what do you? Because it didn't work. It was horrible. And I remember one of the things is like, okay, so I can sit here and listen to this odd abuse that you're throwing at me for just considering your competitor, but what happens when I'm on vacation and my backup guy has to call VMware support? Is he going to talk to somebody like you? Because I don't think I want that.
Right.
You know what I mean? So yeah, I actually was on the fence, Hyper-V versus VMware in those days, because I like you, I'd started on VMware and like, well, this is free. Hyper-V is free, and System Center VMM was $400 a host, I want to say.
Okay.
Something like that. It was really cheap because it was standalone at the time. And
right.
Like, so that, or I think vSphere Essentials is what I would have qualified for, and it was like $3,500 a host. Like, so I try out this Hyper-V thing, and if it doesn't work out, I'm out $800, and then I can go to VMware if I mess up. So yeah, that's actually my story of how I got to Hyper-V. Is the VMware people were just so awful to work with. I'm like, I can't in good conscience buy from people who act this way on a sales call of all things. So
that's your Hyper-V community origin story. So that is why we have all your fantastic Hyper-V content out on the interwebs. That's interesting. As long as I've known you, I never knew that.
I thought I had told you that story, but yeah, it was crazy. I'm still to this day like, I can't believe that was the salesperson and the sales engineer were both just terrible humans.
Weird.
Okay.
Yeah, I had a very very different experience. And I don't know if it was because I was an MSP and we had several very high quality VMware technicians, engineers assigned to us. And I
Could be
don't
the
know when we
size. 'Cause then I went on to a larger organization and they already had VMware, and the rep came in and he was okay. He was just okay. Nothing more than
yeah,
okay. But they did bring a tech guy in who was really good. I really liked him. But he didn't even stay with the company. He moved on from VMware a couple of years after that. So it
yeah,
probably always has had something to do with the size of your organization, who you
yeah.
get.
Because back in those days, I mean, we used to push crazy VMware volume across our customers. I mean, that was the standard, right? We bring on a new customer. Are you on on VMware? Well, first, this was back in the era of like the world was still transitioning from physical servers to VMs, right? And so that was our playbook, right? We'd go into a new customer. You still have physical servers? Okay, why are they not VMs yet? Can we make them VMs? Yes. Okay, here we go. Right. So we did all kinds of VMware business, and I have to, hearing this story of yours now, I have to believe now that it's because of the volume we were pushing, right? So, which, yeah, it was VMware owned back then. It was not Broadcom, but it's interesting the parallels. Still seeing that. I mean, I- don't get me wrong. Every business has a mandate to make money, so they keep the lights on, keep their employees paid. All right, I get that, right? But like your customers should not feel like they're just, a money sponge that's getting wrung out by the vendor, right? So,
Mm.
ah,
It would be interesting.
interesting.
So, like when I first heard about VMware, it was from Microsoft Certified Trainer, and they had just come out. It was just, I think that they only had the workstation product at that time, and I don't even know if they called it workstation, but that's basically what it was. It ran on your desktop.
Yeah.
And man, this guy was a huge fan, and like you could send them, you could send them a fax, and they would send you like I don't, it wasn't a trial license, but it's like, okay, so you're a nerd and you just want to play with this. They'd send you this. And this was the original VMware company. And man, they were just a scrappy little, we just loved tech and flipping things. And they almost immediately got, I don't remember what it was, but like there was an ouster and a bunch of people, the original VMware crew were pushed out basically and replaced by these basically vultures. And it seemed to me like it just got worse over time until you run into Broadcom, which has been not great.
The number of companies I've seen this happen to over the years is just, uh, I was talking with our good friend Mike Nelson week or two back, and we had a very similar conversation about Citrix. Very similar situation with Citrix. I
Mhm.
remember back in the day, they were like, you know, they were one of the tech companies,
Yes.
and then passed around ownership, different leadership, and just they're not even a shadow of what they once were, in my opinion. Yes, they have
No,
some cool
I would
products.
100% agree
But
with that, and it's like, and I've been around with them since the WinFrame days, and WinFrame was an amazing product. Just the
yep,
not just from a technological standpoint, but everything it took to make WinFrame and then MetaFrame happen was unbelievable. And yeah, they've
yeah,
been bought most recently by the Cloud Group. I'm not a fan. They've done a lot of the same kind of, they've made a lot of the similar moves to Broadcom, honestly. So they might get their own episode here on the SysAdmin Weekly one of these days if they don't shape up.
what the hell
Yeah,
has happened to Citrix?
yeah, it's great that like on the one hand, it's like every couple of weeks you're getting level 7, 8, 9 CVEs, and then on the other hand, like, oh, by the way, we also want to jack your prices up, and uh, great.
You know, it's funny you mentioned CVEs because that's a nice segue into something else I wanted to bring up here, right? So when I look at that term customer experience, right, that's not just customer support, that's quality of product, that's security of the product as well too. And so I've seen it come up multiple times over the last year or two now where a lot of people have voiced concern. Mostly I've seen on Reddit because, like most sysadmins, I spend a lot of time on Reddit. A lot of people have voiced concern over the speed and transparency of Broadcom's their advisory process and just information about CVEs, right? So to talk about, you mentioned scores, CVSS scores. So some of the top CVEs that come out here for just a quick search here, I've got 2025 22224, which is a heap overflow in ESXi and VMware Workstation, that had a CVSS of 9.3, which allowed a guest VM admin to execute code in the VMX host process. And again, this is a quick search. I'm not actually looking at the CVE reports themselves. It's just a very quick high-level search. But here's another one, 22225, 42s. Arbitrary kernel write in ESXi that had a CVSS of 8.2, which, and this is the cardinal sin in any virtualization platform, this flaw enabled a sandbox escape, which not great. Not great. And then there's another one, which lesser severity, still a 7.1, still not great, but that was 22226, which was a out of bounds memory disclosure, which again, memory vulnerabilities, not a surprising thing in most modern applications, right? So clearly VMware is not programmed in Rust. So, or a memory safe language. That was my poor attempt at developer humor. Can you tell I'm not a developer? Wait, I have a good one. We talked about Jeffrey Snover, Mike Nelson and I. Jeffrey Snover told me I still laugh at it sometimes. Okay, so SysAdmin had a management problem. A management issue, meaning like, technology management. So he created a Perl script, and now we had 2 management issues. Right? Okay, I know it's bad. I chuckle at it sometimes, though.
The problem is you bring up Perl, which makes everyone sad, and then it's in a joke. So now the sad is balancing out the happy.
Right?
I need to be careful with that, though. I do remember being in a conversation thread once, and somebody was kind of going like that, and somebody else jumped into the thread and just got really mad at her, but Perl's amazing and it's awesome. And I'm like, well, out of all the technology hills I would have chosen to die on,
Perl is probably not one of them.
Bless you, man, because you're way, way tougher than I am, because no, that would not have been the one I would have picked. But boy, he was really invested in it. And all right, guy. Okay. So
oh man. Good times. Well, Eric, I kind of want to wrap this discussion up with what is the impact here on the ecosystem and the industry, and really what we're running into is a situation where many organizations, most of them small and medium-sized, scrambling now to get off of VMware, either because they can't afford it anymore or it's too volatile to stay with them, or whatever, right? And so I don't think I've ever seen as much of a rush to change hypervisors as I have in the last year or two with this VMware deal now. So you have people considering Hyper-V, which cool. Yes. Everybody knows Eric and I love Hyper-V, so happy to hear that. But I mean, there's other solutions like Nutanix, Proxmox are in the running as well too. Proxmox, I have to give an honorable mention here. I also have to preface this with the statement that I have never run Proxmox in production myself. I've only done it in lab environments. But I will say this. Out of all of the hypervisors I am aware of, Proxmox, in my opinion, is the closest to vSphere in look and feel. I mean, if you took away the Proxmox logo out of the management UI and put a VMware logo there, you could almost believe it was vSphere, So, but anyway, those are kind of the 3 big names I hear people moving to. I don't know if there's any others you want to add to the list, Eric.
No, that seems about right. I mean, interestingly, as I understand it, like in the EU, especially Proxmox is getting a lot of growth there.
Yeah.
I don't see very much in the States. And I kind of watch the news a little bit for all this stuff, and it seems like really the big complaint against Proxmox is that it's open source. Like, we're still afraid of open source in 2025 for some reason. Like, well, I would never trust an open source product. Like, oh, really? Really? Do you probably haven't really thought about how many open source products you rely on every minute of every hour of every day.
Go there.
Not a great position to take, honestly, because if that's, you should just stop and get out of technology then if you don't like open source. That's, I Nutanix, I don't know. They seem great. Again, another one of those companies is really great out of the gates, and then like, what has Nutanix done for me lately? So I don't know. So, and then again, maybe I'm just so I am fixated on Hyper-V. That's kind of my thing, and I really do enjoy it. So maybe I'm not giving everybody a fair shake, but yeah, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people are kind of in my position too, is I don't know where I would go from VMware necessarily. I kind of, and that I'm going to let people answer that question for themselves is what I'm going to do. And maybe what I would say is like, whatever, like, so you're an administrator, your organization probably has one gigantic line of business thing that everything depends on, which means you probably have access to user groups for that. Find out what other people are doing in your industry that you care about, the thing that matters most. Like if you're an insurance agency, then you've got an agency manager. What do those folks do? And so on and so forth. In healthcare, we'll have electronic health records is going to usually be what drives what we do. So find out what those folks are doing and why. A lot of times the big vendor there is going to follow what its community is doing.
Right.
So one of the things that VMware painted people into a corner on is they were the number one supported thing by just about every major vendor. Well, if the community start lashing back against their application vendor going, we can't do this VMware thing anymore. We're going to have to close shop, right? We can't run our business on this product anymore. Then if those vendors want to keep in business, they're going to have to listen. That makes sense?
Right.
So that is what I would kind of say. If you're trying to figure out where you want to go, you need to follow, maybe follow your own path. I don't know. I kind of did. I forged my own path on Hyper-V when people weren't really doing it. And I have never really regretted that. So, but you have options. I think where I really want to go is where I see the bigger, I see a lot of ripple effects out of this. One is I don't see the VMware name ever getting its trust back.
No
matter what
way.
happens. They have had a really large, I want to say, cult following, because a lot of times when I would argue with people, because like, well, Hyper-V is terrible for this and that and the other, and after all I figured out, it's like, it's not really that they don't like Hyper-V, it's just VMware is nobody else is going to ever answer any question for them if it's not VMware, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So, okay, fine. And at that point, it becomes a religious debate, and I bow out, believe whatever you want to believe. That's, between you and your deity of choice. I'm okay, do what you need to do. And that's kind of where that got. And I don't, so some of those folks are really going to dig in and hang on to VMware as long as they can. That's fine. But when they start losing those true believers, they're done. They're baked. They're not going to get that trust back ever, no matter what happens with it. Even if, it's just going to be gone. Then you were talking too about how people with skill and ability at VMware have either been pushed out, or I was at a vendor once that was bought by a venture capitalist like this. And I saw the writing on the wall, and I was one of the first people out the door because I could. People, I could go. And the other people at my level also got out quickly because this is not going to go well. I want to get those jobs while I don't have to fight for them. Right. So, that happened at VMware. And so the people that are left are the ones that probably either they're true believers or they couldn't find other jobs. So if that doesn't scare you, right?
Good point.
So the corporation itself may never recover.
Right.
Right. Because if you had a job opening today and it said it was VMware, I'm not going to take that job. I'm just going to keep scrolling. I don't even know what they want. I don't want to work for this company. And who else, so I just really fear that the VMware name is never going to come back, that it's done and it's baked and it's over. And even if I'm wrong about all of that, you also, like you kind of mentioned or alluded to how much they're like, we only like our big customers. Well, one of the things that, so the way VMware treated me then turned around that as I moved through my career and I got in front of bigger organizations and I'm pushing Hyper-V instead of VMware, how much money did I wind up costing them because they treated me so badly in a few sales calls? It's a lot. It's in the millions.
A lot. Yep.
And so you can imagine now that all these people who, cool, so like, oh, we've got our tier 300 customers that we really love. Well, what happens is those customers, air quote, age out of the system, right? When because I'm getting fairly old. I'm going to retire when I can, and there's kids now who are in their 20s who will never see VMware because
Yeah.
the people they're working for can't afford it. So when those young folks age and start to move up in their career the way that I did, and they land at the big companies, and they're like, "V who? VMware what? What's this? I think I read my dad talk about that." No, we're using Proxmox or Hyper-V or whatever we've got. So they're going to lose those 200 and 300 customers too, eventually. Maybe not today,
Yeah.
maybe not tomorrow, maybe not even in this decade. I don't really know, but they're basically putting themselves out of business, which a lot of these folks don't care. They're in it for the 6-month horizon. But this is, I do believe that Broadcom has changed the face of all of this. And I'm gonna stop talking because I have one piece of speculation. I'm wondering if the lashback on this is going to be so hard that we don't start to see sort of, let's go back to physical servers so we can take this virtualization layer out.
Ooh, spicy. Interesting.
I have considered it on
Interesting.
a couple of things. Like, I will tell you, before virtualization became a thing, I had a lot of customers that we were running very successfully on 2 or 3 boxes. Perfect.
Right.
And hardware is
Right.
way more powerful now than it was then.
Oh, for sure.
Maybe we just go back to that. You have a domain controller with print server, you have a file server, probably not running email in-house anymore, so you don't need a mail server. So maybe an app server and you're done. That should be plenty. And you can do that now for $2,500 or so.
Yeah. Boy, I haven't even
So
thought about physical servers, and I couldn't even tell you how long it's
I know
been.
most people haven't. Most people haven't. And I don't know, like another news article that neither of us talked about is that DRAM prices are going up. So
Yeah.
maybe you're like, ooh, buying a virtualization box with 64, 128, 256 gigs of RAM, that's a lot. But what about a plain old, just a domain controller with 8 gigs, 16 gigs? That doesn't
Good
cost
old
much.
1U pizza box server.
If that, if
Yeah.
not a little, like again, going back to your little bitty companies, they're just little, you can run those on Nux now. You can get a little
Yeah, that's
box, about
true.
that big, get 3 of
That's
them,
true.
spend $1,500, run your entire organization off of it. And
Yeah.
like your worst part is, well, I don't have a whole lot of redundancy and storage there. Well, that's not great, but well, all right, you still have backup to cloud, backup to provider, backup to a little USB thing laying around. I mean,
Not to mention,
maybe Broadcom may wind up really setting virtualization back a couple decades.
right? I never considered that. That's a good point. Because I mean, you look at most core critical applications. AD, for example, has its own built-in redundancies and replication. It's so easy to spread it across multiple physical
Mhm.
devices. Same thing with our last episode. We talked about failover clustering in Windows Server. How many different roles can you cluster using failover clustering across physical servers if you wanted to?
I don't even
Uh,
know. That's
uh
a lot.
yeah,
I mean,
and
just
I
the
mean,
built-in ones, like when you go in and say, I want to create a new role, and you get a scrollable list. I know this because I've been doing it a bunch. You have to go to the bottom to find virtual machine. You got to go underneath all these other things.
yeah,
And
and
then
I mean,
somewhere in there is like, I just want to make this generic application HA. So
yeah, because I mean, failover is baked into so many of our applications nowadays that
mhm.
maybe I
I've
mean,
been in virtualization and Hyper-V. I have been in the place of saying, maybe the day of the failover cluster is itself kind of at an end. Or not
right,
at an end. That's not really fair, but yeah, like I would not worry about making domain controller virtual machines HA. Why bother? Because Active Directory itself will give it better redundancy than anything you can do external to Active Directory. So just have a bunch of
right,
domain controllers.
right,
Especially like the way Microsoft does things, the licensing is the same. If I have one HA domain controller on a 5-node cluster or 5 domain controllers, I pay the
yeah,
exact same amount of money. Why would I not have the 5 domain controllers? And then
right,
you're getting down to like, well, okay, so if you're doing it under VMware, then their per core licensing is so high, I can get away with a NUC and a copy of Windows Server on it cheaper than I can the VMware.
interesting. Boy, I've been so pro VMs for such a long time. I haven't even thought about physical servers for a long
As
time.
have I. Same here. And granted, I work with larger organizations who are like, yeah, they're probably never going to do that. But I can sit here all day long and just write down names of companies I work for. Is like, yeah, I might go in and say, you know what, maybe you shouldn't virtualize anymore. Maybe it's just not. It may not work out for you.
Interesting. Yeah, definitely for the SMB space. I could see an argument for it. Maybe we need to have another episode specifically on this topic, because that I got to chew on that for a little bit. I mean, my gut reaction is no, don't take my VMs away. Don't take my, my live migration away. Don't take my all the stuff that we get with that.
Mm-hmm.
But to your point, has Broadcom created so much mistrust in that segment of the market? I could see an argument to be made there. Yeah, definitely. So you and I are going to have to talk this out some more, I think, my friend. So, all right. Well, what do you think? Should we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think they've heard enough of me.
No worries. No worries. Good having you as always, Eric. I always love getting your thoughts, your feedback, and your viewpoints.
Appreciate being
You
here.
often look at things differently than I do. It always makes for an interesting conversation. So very cool. So, well, folks, hope you enjoyed today's episode. Really appreciate you spending some time with us. Again, be sure to check out all the various channels and outlets that the show is available on: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon as well. And again, don't forget to check out the newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. That is a weekly newsletter, just like this is a weekly show. So be sure to check that out. And if you have any feedback that you want to provide to the show, maybe you have your own thoughts on this Broadcom VMware debacle that is happening right in front of our eyes. Maybe you have some thoughts on the physical server versus VM thing that we just got done talking about. Reach out to us, contact@sysadminweekly.com. That'll get you in our inboxes. And, I'd love to get to a point at some point with the show where we are on the regular covering email communications from our listeners, right? Hey, Bob had a really cool comment or thought or funny joke about our last episode or whatever, right? So it'd be cool to have that listener interaction. So again, you can email us at contact@sysadminweekly.com. With that, we'll let you get back to the rest of your day. Thanks for spending some time with us. Stay safe out there, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.